time to focus on truly becoming whole and not just existing throughout life. Yes, your state of health matters, and you must be intentional about practicing habits that promote physical and mental well-being. Thank you so much for joining us on this wellness edition of Jamaica Magazine. I'm your host, Adrian Atkinson. In today's show, we focus on women's health and wellness. Stay with us.
Good day, I'm Theodore Henry, and this is your JIS News for Wednesday, April 19, 2023. Jamaica's tourism sector recorded over $1 billion in earnings for the first 3 months of this year as it drives the country's strong post-pandemic economic rebound. Minister of Tourism Edmund Bartlett outlined the performance and plans for the sector as he opened the 2023-2024 sectoral debate in Parliament yesterday.
This is the biggest and best winter season that Jamaica has ever had in the history of tourism. We brought in 1.185, nearly 1.2 million visitors. And that's 94.4% higher than last year. And we brought in the process $1.12 billion US dollars, which is 46.4% increase over last year.
Minister Bartlett adds that monthly stopover arrivals has surpassed 2019 figures, and 2023 will show a full recovery in annual figures. The calendar year is projected to record 3.8 million visitors and $4.1 billion in earnings. The minister says Jamaica's tourism performance continues to benefit from an increase in investments.
Over the last 5 years, tourism investment contributed 20% of the island's total foreign direct investment. And over the next 5 to 10 years, there are multiple upcoming investment projects which will see an addition of 15 to 20,000 new rooms with investment of 4 to 5 billion US dollars.
Jamaica's tourism industry is now expected to see a full recovery this year ahead of the previously estimated 2024 timeline. To secure tourism's continued growth, the portfolio minister says focused attention will be placed on public order. As he opened the sectoral debate yesterday, Minister Bartlett warned industry players that disorder and poor practices would not be allowed to disrupt the country's destination assurance. He says the post-pandemic boom and attractiveness of the sector has the unfortunate side effect of leading to more disorder in the sector.
So there's also a good thing, Madam Speaker, that so many more people are coming into the tourism space. But it also can be a bad thing if order and criminality and poor practices are made to creep in and provide, Madam Speaker, a disruption of the destination assurance that we offer to our visitors.
Minister Bartlett says this is not an issue tied to any race or people's socioeconomic conditions, and stakeholders have a duty to ensure that all persons entering the space follow the rules and are respectful of the importance of law and order.
It takes one bad incident, Madam Speaker, just one damage at a location, and it destroys the destination, not just for weeks or months, but for years. Let us stand up for good law and order and discipline in the society.
At the same time, the minister is stressing that despite the challenges of crime and violence that exist here in Jamaica and many other destinations, crime against tourists on the island remains extremely low, at less than 0.1%. The Tourism Ministry will be implementing an anti-harassment strategy to ensure the continued safety and security of visitors. In other news, Prime Minister Andrew Holness is urging his fellow CARICOM leaders to continue lobbying the United States to assist regional efforts aimed at stemming the flow of guns into the Caribbean. The Prime Minister was speaking during a roundtable dialogue at the Regional Symposium on Violence as a Public Health Issue with other CARICOM leaders in Port of Spain, Trinidad. He asserts that while regional administrations have had to divert resources from other areas to fund and support a war on drugs, there seems to be no real interest in stopping the other part of the trade, which is the guns. Mr. Holness says this must be addressed as the gun fuels crime, pointing out that they are needed to protect drugs that are transshipped through the borders and are then used to carry out other forms of criminal activities.
We are seeing in Jamaica where the weapon of choice is no longer the AK-47. It is the AR-15, it is the Glock. These are guns that are manufactured in North America. So collectively, as the leaders of CARICOM, we must raise our voice on this. We must appeal to our friends in the North to increase their efforts to prevent the flow of guns into the region. As we have assisted them in the war on drugs, they must assist us in the war on guns.
The Prime Minister adds that countries in the region need to take steps to protect their points of entry and increase their ability to detect the entry of illegal weapons. 5 families in Manchester are now celebrating being in their new homes, courtesy of government's new social housing program, NSHP. Prime Minister Andrew Holness handed over the units last week. The Evans family, whose home was destroyed by fire in 2017, were among the recipients. They received keys to their 3-bedroom abode last Friday. The Kelligan family has been rescued from their menial 1-room dwelling and will move into their brand new 3-bedroom home in short order. Single mom Faith Ann Thomas is giving thanks for the new home that she and her 3 children will now enjoy. Roger Mitchell, who is visually impaired, will be seeing better days now that he and his family have a brand new home. And Miss Bernicia Blake received a 3-bedroom house of her own after having gone through some tough times.
We believe that all Jamaicans are entitled to decent shelter.
Prime Minister Holness reiterates that it is government's responsibility to see to the needs of its people, particularly those who are most vulnerable.
Generally, the people who are living here are not able to afford this. The conscience of the society is that we should provide social housing, the minimum standard of housing. And there are various modalities through which we provide that. This is one form of social housing where we literally come and we build a basic unit and give you that unit fully subsidized, meaning you don't pay anything for it.
And finally, farmers in St. Elizabeth can expect to see a boost in their food production due to the installation of more solar panels at the Beacon E pump station. The installation was carried out by the National Irrigation Commission, NIC, to improve water delivery. Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries Pernell Charles Jr. says the new solar panels will allow the NIC to self-generate around 60% of the electricity needed for the station. This should cut its yearly energy bill by nearly $9.5 million or by 55%.
The energy cost of water production will be reduced by at least 15% in the entire irrigation district. And the reduction will allow for us to be able to translate this now to more efficiency.
He was speaking recently at the Beacon Little Park community in St. Elizabeth to commission the solar panels.
The Beacon E solar pumping station is the 4th NIC pumping station to be outfitted with solar panels. 390 farmers, including 100 female farmers and 1 person living with a disability, will benefit from this solar retrofit through the improved service delivery from the NIC here in Beacon Little Park.
And that's it for JIS News Today. I'm Theodore Henry. Thanks for watching.
The quest to close the gap on women's access to proper health care globally is still a challenge. However, more and more initiatives are being created to spread knowledge about treatment options for some conditions that mostly affect women. Find out more about one such issue in this next feature.
In a highly desirable world, Hinging on some utopic idea, women would probably have been able to bridge the gender wage gap in workplaces.
Maybe our external appearance wouldn't be so important, and perhaps some medical conditions wouldn't have been so prejudiced against us.
But life cannot just be layers of what we conjure in our imaginations. It isn't always a working woman's Shangri-La, or our wives, mothers, sisters, or aunts' health ambitions.
In fact, there are certain health issues that affect women exclusively. Issues such as menopause, postpartum depression, uterine fibroids, and miscarriage. But understanding women's health concerns is the first step towards taking control of our own well-being.
Uterine fibroids are benign tumors of the uterus. That's in medical terms. In layman terms, they are masses that grow on the uterus or on the womb of a woman, and they can grow to various sizes. You can have one, you can have multiple. And the most important thing patients tend to ask is, are these cancerous? So benign means it's not cancerous.
Medical experts will tell you that the root causes may not be so clear, but there are certain factors that are most likely to account for this issue impacting women.
We believe a lot of women who have it actually do because of genetics. So if your mother or your sister or you have a strong family history of uterine fibroids, it's quite likely that you're at risk of having uterine fibroids as well. We also believe that they tend to pop up more so when your hormones are very active. So that's why it presents in those patients in their reproductive age. So once you get to your 20s, 30s, 40s, that's when you would expect fibroids to start to show up. It may be occurring in response to your diet. So if you have a poor diet, high in red meat, highly processed foods, very little fruits and vegetables, we believe that that impacts on the presence of fibroids and definitely the growth of fibroids.
Meet Raquel Bailey, whose unfortunate journey with uterine fibroids lasted for almost 9 years.
I was around 27, touching 28, and I went for my regular female checkup. When they did the ultrasound, they said everything was fine, but there was a point that he could not see beyond. So he decided to go do it vaginally. And that's when he found the fibroid on top of my uterus. I was saying to myself, it's hard. I'm not sure if I can get pregnant with it. I was worried about conception, of course, and I was worried about if it is cancerous or anything, because at that point I wasn't sure what fibroids was. I knew it ran in my family, but back then they didn't call it fibroids. My tummy began to grow, especially the top part, since it was resting on top. So my tummy began to protrude. And of course, when I had my period, the pain was severe. I had, to the point that I even had to lie on the floor to get a little bit of relief from it. Yeah, my clothes couldn't fit much because of the tummy hanging over.
The symptoms occur dependent on the size of the fibroids, the location of the fibroids, and also dependent on what else is happening to the patient otherwise, right? So common symptoms related to size are, if the fibroids are very big, then the woman looks as if she looks pregnant. So she notices that her tummy is growing, the waist of the clothes start to fit her a bit differently. She might start to have what we call compressive symptoms. Based on the location of the uterus, it can press on the bladder, which is in the front, and that's where your urine is. So you might find that you're complaining of more frequent urination. You're going to the bathroom to pee all the time, right? Another thing is that your bowel is at the back, behind your uterus, so you may get constipated. Again, because your nerves come from behind, from the spine backwards, then you can also have compressive symptoms on nerves around there, and some patients come with back pain. Because it is close to where the blood vessels go down into our legs and the nerves go down into our legs, some people complain about pain radiating all the way down to their legs, as well as swelling. If the fibroids are on the inner side of the uterus or within the muscle of the uterus, that's where your period comes from now. So those patients tend to complain about heavy bleeding that is lasting more than a week, more than the average period. They're soaking through pads in an hour, in 2 hours, messing up themselves, right? That causes a lot of social embarrassment. Not only that, but if you're bleeding that heavily, then you start to get symptoms of anemia. So you start to feel weak, dizzy, you might actually faint. Another symptom that patients can present with is pain. So if the fibroids grow to a certain size, then they start to outgrow the blood supply that comes from outer to inner. And sometimes they can, what we call, degenerate, and that causes patients to have a lot of pain.
I got married, and my husband and I spoke, and I said to him, all right, I don't want to do the surgery, have any surgical procedure done on me, just in case that they found more and they had to take out the entire thing. So I wanted to try and conceive before doing the myomectomy. Then I got pregnant in the February of 2021. That's when the fibroids became aggressive. It grew and it grew and it grew. I looked so much like I was full-term pregnancy when I was only 4 months pregnant. So it was very aggressive. I was really sick in the first part of the pregnancy, so much so that I was labeled a high-risk patient. After having my baby, I went to the doctor to do my regular checkup, and Dr. Madam was saying to us when we decided to take out the fibroids. So I told her we were waiting on her. She said, no man, the decision is yours. So I said to her, all right, maybe we can do it now. I was there touching my tummy because when I went in, it was huge, huge. It was like a full baby. It was the size, the fibroid was the size of a basketball. It was, yeah, and there were 3 others, so it was 4 fibroids. And she took it out, and when she took it out, she said everything went well, and my uterus, it's healthy. That's the word she used. The best part of my journey having fibroids is hearing that there are treatment options available.
So fibroids can be treated in a number of different ways, but really and truly treatment should be aimed at the patient's symptoms as well as what their future fertility desires are. Now, if you are having bleeding problems and the size of the fibroid is not significant, then we can entertain giving you medical management to try and maintain the bleeding to a level that is acceptable. So sometimes that involves using tablets. There are some NSAIDs that we use for that. There are hormonal tablets that we can use. There's also the hormonal injection that we can use to help to reduce the amount of bleeding that you are having. If it is that you are having a problem with pain and size, then that's where surgery comes in. A lot of the patients ask, why doc, I don't really want to do surgery. I'm not ready to do surgery. And they ask if there's anything that can be used to shrink the fibroids. There are medications out there that have been used to shrink fibroids, but they don't maintain the fibroid at that size for the rest of your life. And they can only be used for a short period. If they are not so large but they are plentiful and they're causing you significant symptoms like your blood count is really low, you're frequently missing work, it really interrupts with your daily living, then we would recommend doing surgery. And surgery involves either removing the fibroids only, or we can remove the uterus in total. Now that decision is a big decision. If you have finished having your children, you don't want to have any more kids, then clearly removing your uterus is okay.
What I learned coming out of this entire experience is that I should not be afraid of my doctor, all right, or doctors in general. The gynecologists, they are there to help you. Visit them, have an annual or your regular routine checkup. It is to ensure that you have a healthy life.
Hi, I'm Vanessa Megu. I'm the mother of an autistic child, Adriana Francis. It is Autism Awareness Month, and what I'd like from Jamaica as a parent of an autistic child is maybe a little bit more tolerance, a little bit more understanding. When we take them on the road, if they're in an unfamiliar situation, there are times when they'll throw what would look to you as like a tantrum, but it's actually a meltdown. Because for them, they are highly sensitive, and many times sounds that we can block out, feelings that we can analyze or we can assimilate, it's hard for them. They feel like all sounds are being thrown at them, all feelings are being thrown at them. They're overwhelmed with stimuli, with sensations, and for them, a part of the response to this overstimulation is for them to hit their heads, for them to scream, for them to behave in a way that as a society we may find unacceptable. But as a mother of an autistic child, I completely understand, and we're just asking for a little bit more tolerance from you.
The government is increasing support for victims of gender-based violence through legislation and partnerships. Let's learn more about these plans and the commitment to eliminating the abuse of our women.
The findings from the Gender Assessment Report are commensurate with the community outreach focus of the Bureau of Gender Affairs and the lived experiences of numerous families. The report highlights data produced from the Bureau of Gender Affairs and Statin, which show that 1 in every 4 Jamaican women experience physical violence from a male partner. It also shows that young women, 15 to 24 years, are vulnerable to sexual violence, and this is among girls/women with little to no education and who live with their partners from an early age. It also identified that victims/survivors of GBV and their children tend to experience worse educational and health outcomes in their lifetime. A very practical response to the gender-based violence prevalence data is the development of the draft National Shelter Strategy. Through the implementation of the strategy, we launched what we call the Continuum of Care for Survivors of Gender-Based Violence. And this clearly outlines the roles and responsibilities of the participating organizations or agencies to ensure the seamless process for care of the victims. A memorandum of understanding was signed between specific ministries, departments, and agencies to aid in this initiative. So from the moment we get the call through to taking that victim or survivor to a safe place, there is a seamless pathway between the agencies and the entities that are involved in that process. The Bureau of Gender Affairs is in partnership with the Spotlight Initiative to coordinate the implementation of the National Shelter Strategy. The first national government-owned and operated shelter in the Northeast region and a regional shelter in the Eastern region to provide rescue, psychosocial support, restoration, and skills building. The next would be renovation and retrofitting of 1 additional property to serve as a Western Regional Shelter. And I'm really happy to announce that the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service has allocated $50 million to complete the renovation and retrofitting of this regional shelter in the West for victims and survivors of gender-based violence. And we should have that shelter ready sometime late this year. Revision of the Domestic Violence Act to provide increased support to victims and survivors. That's another area, and I am happy to report that we signed off on the final drafting of the amendments to the Domestic Violence Act, and we will be taking it to Parliament in the first quarter of the 2023-24 fiscal year. So we will have those amendments come into effect early this year. We're going to be ramping up the community outreach through Partnership for Empowerment initiative to provide financial support to NGOs and community advocacy groups as partners to address GBV. And so far, we have 16 partners across the island, and they also form that network that help us to ensure that we can protect our women. Development of knowledge products on gender-based violence is another area. So we have prepared information in Braille for the blind and voice training for empowerment and self-efficacy skills. We'll also establish gender-based violence helplines. The helpline unit is actually up and running, and the training of social workers and counselors.
This April is recognized as Cervical Cancer Awareness Month by the Ministry of Health and Wellness. The theme is Ending Cervical Cancer Within a Few Generations. Women are being encouraged to screen for cervical cancer by getting a pap smear or human papillomavirus HPV test done. These tests will help the early detection of cervical cancer and allow for vital treatment. Here are some other key points you should know. About 70% of cervical cancer cases are caused by the human papillomavirus HPV, and everyone who is sexually active will at some point contract HPV. It is usually harmless, but in some women, it can result in cervical cancer. The Ministry of Health and Wellness is urging parents to allow young girls from age 9 to 14 to take the HPV vaccine, which reduces the risk of developing cervical cancer. Statistics from the Jamaica Health and Lifestyle Survey 2016 to 2017 indicate that less than half of women aged 15 to 54 years reported having done a pap smear within the last 3 years. So we're urging young women to get screened by visiting their nearest health center, family doctor, or gynecologist.
We protect our women by giving them a voice. We must never allow them to hurt. We must embrace their uniqueness and the value they bring to society.
If you missed aspects of today's show, visit our website at gis.gov.jm to find more content like this. You can also send us your feedback on today's show or any of our programs via email to jamaicamagazine@gis.gov.jm. On behalf of the entire production team, I'm Adrian Atkinson, thanking you so much for watching.
This has been a production of the Jamaica Information Service, the voice of Jamaica.